Snow sifted through the air like pale ashes from some ancient pyre, the flakes settling upon the ramparts of Winterfell in mute, steady procession. They whispered along stone and timber, gathered in the crevices of arrow slits, and softened every hard edge of the keep, until the fortress resembled a dream of itself, familiar and yet curiously distant, half lost behind white veils. It was far past midnight, and no hammer rang in the forges, no voices traded jests near the kitchens, no laughter rose from the great hall. Even the kennels were still. Winterfell breathed only in long, slow draughts of icy wind. To Bran Stark, listening from the solitude of his rooms in the broken maester's tower, that hush felt almost like reverence, an expectant pause before some utterance of the old gods. He sat within a pool of candlelight, his woven blankets drawn high to guard against chill that crept through every shutter and mortar seam. The fire had burned low. It snapped only now and again, a single crack loud in the silence. Flickers of orange traced the contours of his face, carved them in alternating shadow and glow. High cheekbones, the line of a jaw still boyish yet set, with a prince's calm, and eyes that saw more than they confessed. Those eyes strayed often to the narrow window carved in the wall, though nothing lay beyond save night and winter shroud. Bran was not looking with those eyes. Inside him stretched an endless lattice of roots and branches, luminous pathways of memory and possibility yet slipped beyond measure of place or hour. In that hidden forest, he walked whenever the world of stone and sinew grew small. The weirwoods sang softly tonight, a many-voiced chorus carried on the hush. He could feel their songs like currents beneath the snow, touching minds of direwolf and raven, hare and ghostly owl. Yet another note thrummed beneath them all, a deeper octave, vast and restless, as though a mountain had begun to stir. Bran's thoughts drifted toward the godswood. The ancient heart tree stood there, its red leaves crusted in frost, its white trunk blushing under a glaze of ice. He pictured the carved face, those weeping eyes, mouth twisted in pain or wonder, and he let the vision draw him outward, slipping skin and blood for feather and wind. A wheeling murder of ravens spiraled above Winterfell's rooftops, their wings black against the pale sky. Bran nested his will in one of them, felt lungs like bellows pump frozen air, felt pinions adjust to swirling gusts. The castle unfurled beneath him. It seemed somehow smaller than the motes of flame scattered atop it. Watch of fires guttering in braziers, torches at the turns of walls, each one a fragile defiance of night. Beyond the outer bailey rose a darker shape, vast and coiled upon itself. Wings tucked, neck curved. A ridge top of obsidian scales glistening with hoarfrost. Drogon. Bran's borrowed eyes caught the subtle shift of that mountain of muscle, as the dragon lifted his head from beneath a folding of wing. Two embers opened. They burned red, then deeper crimson, then an inner white that seemed to see far more than torchlight could reveal. Bran's heart quivered within his true body leagues away. He felt the familiar gravity of that creature's presence even through raven's sight, the immensity of heat caged within scale and sinew. Drogon exhaled. Steam rolled from his nostrils, pluming high before shredding upon the wind. For long moments he did not move again, as though weighing the hush that blanketed Winterfell. Yet something unsettled him. Bran watched the great head tilt, saw the sail of one wing extend slightly, testing the air. A shiver passed down the black ridge of spines. Then Drogon's eyes turned, snapped. To the godswood. The raven beneath Bran convulsed, thrown into erratic flutter by a tremor of dread and awe. Drogon had felt him, or felt something tangled with him. The whisper of weirwood, the secrets that knit leaf to root to bone. The dragon's gaze held the trees for a breath that seemed to span epochs, and Bran knew that unseen rivers of memory were flowing between beast and wood, old as Valeria's first forging of chains and spells. At last, Drogon rose. The snow around him leapt away in a frantic storm of powder as he unfurled his wings. The hush broke. There was a groan of timber. A distant shout from unsullied sentries startled from drowsy watch. He did not launch into the sky. Instead he strode forward, stepping over a parapet with careless grace, talons biting stone yet scarcely marking it. Another step, and he crossed the arch of the gate as if it were a child's toy, his barbed tail scraping sparks where it kissed iron. Bran felt the raven's pulse hammering. Instinct bade the bird wheel away. But Bran held it, guiding weak, striving muscles to keep pace, circling above the dragon as Drogon threaded streets rendered narrow by his enormity. Beneath the flapping of wings, Bran caught fresh cries, voices loud with fear. "Hold! Hold the torches! Back, back!" Steel hissed from scabbards, though what blade could matter? Unsullied formed ranks, spears leveled like fragile reeds. Drogon paid them scant heed, his attention fixed on the inner wall and the snow-lined gate that guarded the godswood. Lantern-bearers scattered as he advanced. In the blink of a raven's eye he was there, shoulders and wing joints colliding with the gate, which buckled and flew inward, boards snapping like twigs. The great weirwood lay before him, the clearing luminous under drifting snow light. Bran felt a sudden surge in the songs of the trees, an intake of breath across the labyrinth. Drogon halted at the verge, lowered his head, and sniffed the frozen air. Then, with a rumble low as shifting earth, he crept onward, each step a deliberate vow. Bran released the raven. He snapped back into his own skin, gasping. The flame on the hearth guttered as if the wind had found him. For an instant, he simply heard his breath and the far-off thunder of footsteps on packed snow. He knew he should ring a bell, call guards, warn someone. Daenerys, Jon, anyone who could stand between fire and Hearttree. But the impulse died unlived. A quieter instinct claimed him, older than fear or fealty. Drogon was not come as enemy. Bran had felt the resonance hum between them. A chord struck across gulfs of distance and shape. The dragon was answering something. The children of the forest might have called it the deep music. He wheeled his chair from the hearth toward the stair that spiraled down the tower. His hands trembled upon the wheels, yet they moved with swift purpose. Candle flame wavered behind him, casting enormous twin shadows that seemed to stalk him along the walls. Stone steps wound below, narrow, treacherous under shifting drifts that seeped through the arrow loops. Bran negotiated them as best he could, teeth clenched against jarring jolts. He forced himself to think only of each turn of the wheel, each gasp of the torch he carried. The castle lay silent still, but now the silence quivered, as if Winterfell itself were listening. Outside, the snow struck his cheeks like pinpricks of ice. Lanterns along the yard bled faint circles through the gloom. Bran could see movement near the shattered gate. Dark forms rushing, the gleam of spear points, the glint of unsullied armor. Someone shouted orders in a clipped tongue, yet no spear darted toward Drogon. The men hung back beyond his sweep. He had folded his wings tight to pass, but they rose now, like walls of night behind him, enclosing the Hearttree and its clearing in near darkness, save for the pale glow of the bleeding mouth carved in bark. Bran felt every push of his wheels as lengthening miles. Fresh snow clogged the spokes. He fought it, driving forward. A sense of inevitability filled him. Every roll an echo of footsteps already trod in some other wen. In the Godswood gate's debris lay splinters gnarled like bones. Bran crossed them and entered. The hush within astonished him. No wind dared breathe here. Snow fell straight and soft, each flake lingering on the air as though uncertain of its welcome. Drogon loomed beside the weirwood, neck descending in slow arcs as he inhaled the scent of root and blood-colored leaf. Steam wreathed his horns. When his breath struck low branches, the crusted frost hissed, melting in rivulets that froze again mid-fall. Tiny beads of glass upon white skin. Bran halted a respectful distance away. He could feel the heat radiating from the dragon, a furnace beckoning in the brittle night. Yet the greater warmth lay in his mind, a pull like moonrise upon tide, drawing him forward across still water. Drogon turned, black eyes narrowing. Bran raised his lantern, its flame a single trembling star inside its cage. The dragon's pupils widened, swallowing almost the entire globe's red. A blow of wind rustled across the clearing, but no wind touched Bran's face. It came from within himself, a rushing of old leaves, of wings, of distant waves striking basalt. He set the lantern down, extinguished it with gloved fingers, and let the darkness settle. All color fled, save the meager red of the tree's leaves, the banked ember glow, deep within Drogon's throat. Bran's wheels crunched forward. He stopped, scant yards from the black-scaled breast that towered above him. They regarded one another. Time did not seem to move. Bran felt weightless, suspended between heartbeats. Memories flashed, not his, not entirely. A vast sky above lurid mountains, molten stone rivering down slopes, the salt sting of smoke and sea, where Valyria once sprawled. A girl of silver hair leaning close, murmuring in a tongue of flame and conquest. Another of stark black braids, arms wrapped around the first as towers shuddered in greasy light. Through them all, hunger, delight, unbound power swelled by thunder of wings. Drogon offered these visions like fragments of a song, inviting harmony. Bran answered. His mind opened root by root, branching through winter soil and summer loam, through wolf-pack and loon's cry, through the endless dead and unborn who had knelt before the heart tree. He showed the dragon-green dales of the north, the laughter of younger siblings chasing fireflies across inner wards, the smell of fresh-baked bread and innocence before broken bones. He showed him the ancient faces of weirwoods glowing in moonrise, portals wherein time twined upon itself like ivy. He showed him the long night in distant ages, starless and bitter, when the first dragons were only pale shapes coiled beneath shattered moons. The visions melded. Bran was no longer sure which belonged to whom. He felt scales instead of skin, heat swirling in dark belly, the tug of wind upon membrane, wing. He felt also the ache of mortal joints, hands that could not feel ground underfoot, a boy's heart longing to run where legs refused. They bled together. Drogon lowered his head until his nostrils stirred Bran's hair, breath scorching yet strangely gentle. A rumble shook the snowy earth, neither threat nor warning. It was a question. Bran reached out. Snow clung to the wool of his gloves. He laid a hand upon the dragon's muzzle. The scale beneath was smoother than he expected, as if glazed in glass, but alive with heat. Sparks raced through his fingertips, lightning down his spine, flowering behind his eyes. He saw Balerian's wings blotting suns, Vigar roaring over fields of ghost grass under moonless ruin, Meraxes twisting above rolling seas, but also Deary wolves skinny with hunger in the bite's merciless winter. A stag running wounded beneath wolf trees, a crippled boy dreaming of flight. All threads wound together around the point where his palm met Drogon's flesh. A woven knot of destiny too vast for mortal ken. The dragon shuddered. A sound escaped him that was almost soft, as if dredged from some hidden well of tenderness. His enormous eyes, rimmed in ruddy fire, closed. He sank to his belly, wings folding like gentle giants at rest. Snow puffed upward where his body settled. His neck curved about Bran's chair, encircling boy and weirwood in a corridor of onyx flesh. Anyone watching would see a monster poised to swallow, but Bran felt only shelter, the promise of fire against encroaching dark. Somewhere beyond the broken gate came footfalls. Shouts muted by distance. Bran heard a voice he recognized, Jon's voice, clipped with alarm, calling orders to stand down, the words laced with cold fear for the brother he could not reach. Others argued, Missandei pleading calm, Grey Worm insisting caution, Tyrion speculating in half-whispers whether Daenerys should be woken. Yet none crossed the boundary of the gods would. Perhaps they sensed the old god's will. Perhaps the sight of Drogon's wing blocking the way cowed even the bravest. Bran scarcely noticed. In the cradle formed by those wings, he looked again upon the heart tree. The carved face seemed changed, the mouth softer, eyes less tormented by eternal grief. Snow landed upon its cheeks like quiet absolution. Bran breathed deep, the resinous scent rising where Drogon's heat thawed the bark. He felt the tree exhale in turn, offering sap. Blood, the whisper of names long dead. That breath mingled with dragon steam. Where they touched, the air shimmered, a distortion like heat mirage. And within it, Bran saw ripples of color, as though the night itself were a tapestry and someone adjusted threads. He closed his eyes. In the dark behind lids, he found himself standing, not seated, upon bare ground sprinkled with starlight. Drogon loomed beside him, but smaller somehow. no more than a head taller than man, yet every inch still wrought of roaring force. Bran lifted a hand. Scales bright as polished jet reflected constellations. He sensed Drogon looking not at him but through him, peering at the one who stood behind Bran in every dream. But the raven was silent now, feathers blurring into bark and snow, its 1,000 eyes shuttered in secret contemplation. The boy and the dragon turned together toward distant trees. Through them, a figure approached, haloed in pale green glow, neither man nor woman but something older, crowned with antler branches and draped in leaves that rustled like sighs. The children of the forest named him Feridhan, the Ruta speaker. The Valyrians might have called him Adrauz, the word before flame. Titles mattered little. He was story given shape, memory walking. He gestured to Bran, palm upturned, and what lay upon that palm glittered like a single tear of weirwood sap, crystal clear, holding within it swirling motes of ember. A seed. Bran understood at once. Dragons had their own seeds, eggs waiting centuries for heat and wonder to coax them awake. Weirwoods too, bore seeds, blood seeds, memory seeds, waiting in soil and time until a mind strong enough could sprout them into worlds. Feridhan offered such a seed to Bran, but the hand that closed upon it was not Bran's. Drogon bent his neck, lips parting just enough to pluck that shining drop upon forked tongue. He swallowed, and in that swallow Bran felt circuits of fire rush through vein and root alike. The vision collapsed. Bran was again seated beneath soaring neck and vaulting wings, the world crisp and cold. But something had changed. Drogon's body glowed in places beneath his scales, faint crimson like slow-moving magma. Lines of light traced from throat to breastbone and outward along limbs, veins of living rune. Snowflakes hissed and vanished wherever they landed. The dragon stirred, shifting his bulk. The massive head lifted, eyes opening with new depth. Within their pits swam flecks of palest green, like leaves whirling in storm. Bran's palm still rested upon muzzle. Where they touched, a born-again pulse quickened. It beat not as boy or dragon but as union of the two. Bran sensed more than words. Agreement, covenant, promise. Yet another feeling burgeoned behind it, impatient yearning. The age-old ache of wings denied the sky. Drogon turned, presented his neck. Membrane wings tilted, casting gusts that rattled branches. Snow roared away. With slow grace he knelt, crouching low enough that the ridged plate at base of his neck hovered mere feet above ground. A rush of laughter nearly escaped Bran. Laughter bright and wild, and sharp enough to bleed on. For the urge to mount that offered back surged bright as dawn. Yet he hesitated. Legs useless, arms trembling. He glanced down at thin blanket of snow, smoothed by dragon's warmth. The distance between chair and scale might have been a chasm. He could not stand, could not climb. Drogon breathed, a sound like bellows stoked. The scales there parted slightly, revealing in their seams narrow ridges that unfolded, staggered spurs of keratin rising as makeshift steps. Bran's breath caught. Slowly, he reached out to seize the first spur. Strength flooded his limbs where there had been none. Not muscle, not nerve, but something else lifting him, knitting a temporary wholeness from borrowed flame. He pulled, sliding from the seat. His boots touched dragon skin. They held, steady, as though magnetized. Another pull, another step. The air buzzed around him, raw with ignited life. He climbed until he settled into the hollow where neck met shoulders. The place Daenerys had once claimed as hers. He did not fall. The dragon curved wings to shield him from wind. Bran felt bones beneath flesh. Colossal. Unyielding. He pressed a palm flat there, and from that contact knowledge rippled outward, mapping tendon and sinew, joint and flight muscle, like echo lines through cavern. Drogon too felt him, adjusting posture by hair's breadths until they balanced as one. Noise erupted beyond the trees. Jon's voice again, nearer now, accompanied by scuffle of many boots. Sansa shouted from ramparts for torches, demanded the maester's fastest raven. The cry of a beaten warning horn sailed across Winterfell's towers. Fractured, uncertain. Bran turned his head. Through the arch left by shattered gate, he glimpsed figures clustering, their faces little moons of torch glow against sweeping dark. No one advanced. Drogon's wingbeats surged once, twice, not yet to launch but to taste the air. Snow billowed. Wind lashed Bran's cloak, snapping fur collar about his throat. The dragon's tail flicked, smashing apart a garden wall with careless ease. Tension gathered inside those vast muscles, yet he remained ground-bound, waiting for Bran's will. Bran closed his eyes. He listened, not to shouts nor cracking ice, but to deep-root murmurs thrumming underfoot, to molten heartbeats inside dragon chest. In those pulses, time itself beat. Past and future twined, each stroke promising worlds undone and remade. Whatever lay ahead, battlefields of blackened snow, skies flowered with frost-birthing flame. The fall of kings and rise of monsters, they would meet it together. But not yet. The hour begged stillness, the union sealed but untested. Bran leaned forward, forehead resting upon obsidian scale, and whispered a single word that was not quite word. A note of green singing through red fire, telling Drogon to rest, to keep his fires banked this night. Drogon's breath eased, a descending rumble like thunder retreating toward horizon. Slowly, he folded wings back to cloak Bran against the cold, curled, tail-round trunk of Hearttree, and lowered his head to settle near the boy's hand. Thus they remained while night wore on, two shadows braided among silent snowflakes. Winterfell's fear-struck watchers saw only dragon roosted beside sacred tree, his aloft rider still as part of the weirwood. They dared not intrude. Somewhere Daenerys paced battlements in confusion and chill. Somewhere Tyrion scribbled lines of cunning in torchlit chambers. Somewhere the Night King's armies marched across dead fields unseen. Yet in the Godswood, amid ancient eyes and new-forged bond, destiny pivoted like a weather vane, catching a wind no mortal charted. Morning's gray would uncover broken gate and prints of talon and wheel, but the hush would linger, a secret note underlying dawn song of thrush and crow. And deep within Bran's chest, where once only memory nested, the seed Drogon had swallowed glowed, its twin sprouting roots into mind and marrow alike, binding rider to mountain covenant, older than any crown. Beyond the walls, the first pale blush of dawn crept beneath clouds, smearing faint rose across frosted sky. Bran raised his eyes to that slender promise of light, and the dragon stirred beneath him, responding to upward gaze. They did not yet rise. They merely breathed, savoring dawn's edges, letting it sharpen them for storm to come. Snowflakes melted on Bran's lashes, and in their cold vanish he tasted smoke, oak, salt, blood, and the beginning of flight. PGSQL. Dawn inched across Winterfell like a hesitant guest, pale light creeping over battlements and icy crenellations in thin, trembling bands. The snowfall slowed to a spectral drift, and clouds receded northward, as if making space for something greater than sun. In the Godswood the hush persisted, yet within it small sounds gained new weight. The brittle snap of a twig beneath frozen loam, the wet sigh of snow sliding from a branch, the soft churn of steam curling off dragon hide. Bran felt each note resonate through Drogon's immense body, as if it were his own spine, every twitch carried into marrow. The bond no longer pulsed as shock, but as steady heartbeat, a bass rhythm beneath waking world. He remained nestled against the joint of Drogon's neck, cloak drawn close where the beast's heat fought the lingering bite of winter. Bran's first urge was to explore, stretch this newfound wholeness to feel how far thought could fly with wings of living flame. Yet instinct, older than curiosity, advised stillness. Bonds of such depth, the weirwoods whispered, must settle like sap before it hardens into amber. Patience. Roots do not race. A raven alighted upon the heart tree's lowest branch, cocking its head at the unlikely pair below. Bran's senses slipped toward it, brushing the bird's mind with feather-light question. The raven blinked, once, twice, then sounded a throaty croak and took wing, scattering frost in its wake. It wheeled over the Godswood wall, a dark scout bound for wherever ravens gossip of miracles. Bran watched it go. spirit half-tethered to its sooty plumage until the tree's own quiet insistence drew him inward again. Beyond the shattered gate, Winterfell awakened in fits. The ringing of hammers resumed in distant forges. Hoarse calls echoed as guards rotated posts, their breath forming ghosts above helmets. Yet every stride, every shouted order came wrapped in caution, as though each man and woman feared to rouse the dragon coiled in their midst. Bran sensed their apprehension like wind, tugging at canvas. Under its pressure, doubt swirled among commanders. Jon Snow was first to appear at the Godswood's threshold, once the sun edged past cloud. He wore a heavy cloak of rough black wool and bore Longclaw at his hip, yet his gloved hands hung open, palms forward. Bran's gaze slid to Drogon's eyes. Twin furnaces tracked Jon with a measured calm. The great head did not rise, but nostrils flared, tasting the air, sampling the scent of snow, steel, and kinship, forged on battlefields. "Bran," Jon called, his voice low so as not to carry. "Are you hurt?" The question reached Bran through layers of silence, muffled as though spoken underwater. He parted his lips, but no sound emerged. The connection with Drogon thrummed, drawing words into depthless wells. Bran tried again and managed to whisper, "I am well, Jon." He was unsure whether Jon heard or if Drogon relayed some impression, for the older brother exhaled in visible relief. Jon stepped forward until he reached the line where broken boards and scattered hinges marked the gate's ruin. Beyond that he hesitated. He had seen Drogon furious before. At Meereen's besieging fleet, at the Field of Fire Reborn. Knew the cost of misjudging that unfathomable temper. Bran saw the memory flicker behind Jon's eyes. The day Daenerys had fallen from the sky at Rook's Rest, and Drogon's roar had shattered trebuchets like toys. Even the bravest man would think twice before crossing those unseen boundaries now. Behind Jon filtered Grey Worm and a handful of unsullied captains, their spears angled downward, but ready. Sansa appeared beside them in her fox fur mantle, red hair aflare against pale dawn. Tyrion hovered at her shoulder, parchment unfurled and forgotten in stiffening fingers. Farther back, Arya perched on rampart shadows, arrow nocked, though loosely held. Daenerys herself stood half-hidden beneath a lintel of stone, eyes fixed on Drogon, with a mixture of wonder, betrayal, and profound loneliness. Bran felt her gaze like frost at the edge of sunlit fields, a cold that would encroach if given moment. Jon cleared his throat. "Brother, will you come down?" Bran studied the distance to ground. In ordinary hours he would have needed strong arms to lift him from this perch. But the bond lent subtle strength. He shifted his weight, and Drogon responded, tilting a broad plate of scale to form a ramp that met earth in gradual slope. Bran eased himself forward. Where his gloves gripped black armor, he sensed a hum of welcome. He glided to ground without stumble, feeling for the first time in years a ghost of sensation rush through withered legs. Cutaneous sparks, echoes rather than true movement, yet startling in their promise. He steadied himself on folded wheel rims of his chair, turning to Drogon with silent gratitude. The dragon answered by dipping his massive head until one eye, vast as a shield, hovered level with Bran's own. In its depth, Bran glimpsed flickering green-lit tempests, as if an entire forest smoldered in that pupil's core. With Bran on soil, Jon ventured 3 cautious steps further. He signaled the Unsullied to stay. Sansa's hand found Tyrion's sleeve, staying him. Their faces awaited Bran's explanation, but what tale could suffice? That dragon and cripple had met in dreams before dawn, and sealed an accord, older than Valyria's volcanoes? That root and fire now wove threads in his veins such that past and future braided under his skin? Bran inhaled crisp air laced with smoke. "He is at peace," Bran said, voice gaining clarity. "We share purpose." Jon looked over Bran's shoulder at Drogon. The dragon did not bare teeth. Nevertheless, the thrum of power surrounding him made the air taut as a bowstring. "What purpose?" "To avert the night that owns no dawn," Bran replied. He glanced toward horizon, where a vague line of dark clouds massed. Not mere weather. He felt the Night Kings will like sleet pricking the bounds of thought. The army of the dead had been scattered after the fall of the necromancer, but whites still marched in grim tatters, propelled by residual malice, gathering strength around some new dread nucleus out in the frost-bleached wastelands. Bran had glimpsed ragged shapes under an aurora, threading lost valleys beyond Last Hearth, coalescing as a bruise along the earth. "We must fly north," he murmured, "beyond the broken fist, to where old shadows gather. There is something there. They search for it, clawing through ice. If we reach it first." Daenerys stepped into view then. Sable cloak, lined with silver fur, clasped at her throat. Her eyes, once warm amethyst, now shimmered with steel edges, sharpened by disquiet. "My dragon heeds another," she said in a tone between heartbreak and accusation. "Bran, what have you done?" Bran felt Drogon shift behind him, wings rustling. A puff of smoke drifted skyward. He turned to Daenerys, meeting grief with calm. "He chooses freely. The old powers awaken something in him, and he, in me. We." Bran paused, seeking language broad enough. "We are two instruments tuned to the same song." Her jaw tightened. "You speak of songs while he leaves me, his mother, without word?" She took a single step closer, then halted when Drogon's tail scraped stone. Pain welled in her eyes. Bran tasted its acid on the air. "I freed him, fed him, bled for him. Now he would abandon me because a boy touched a tree? Duller." "Not abandon," Bran said quietly. "Transform. What is coming cannot be burned by fire alone, nor slain by blades of dragon glass. It hungers not just for flesh, but for time itself. Memories, roots, the weft of the living world. Drogon carries flame. I carry memory. Together we might mend the breach." Tyrion cleared his throat, parchment crinkling. "Forgive me, my prince and my queen," he appended with uneasy glance at Daenerys. "But might we first establish pragmatic matters? How long will Drogon remain thus docile? What assurances do we have that Winterfell will not wake to ruin if he dreams ill?" Drogon's eyes narrowed, and a low rumble vibrated the ground. Tyrion's tongue froze mid-quibble. Bran raised a hand, lightly brushing dragon muzzle. Thunder hushed. "He will guard Winterfell while we prepare," Bran said. "And we have little time. 10 days, perhaps less, before the gathering north coalesces around an artifact lost since the Age of Heroes. If they seize it, the winds of winter will never yield." Jon exchanged wary looks with Sansa. "An artifact. An obsidian monolith," Bran answered, "formed in the shape of a fang, veined with red and whitest ice. The first men named it the Shard of Morning. The Night King sought it before his fall, for it amplifies cold song. Another now takes up that quest." Bran's pupils darkened as visions flickered. Rag-wrapped whites bearing fragments of frozen bone, half-remembered others drifting like storm ghosts, and at their center a tall silhouette with eyes not blue, but a bleak, starless gray. "He carries the whispers of those who died beyond the wall, a chorus of sorrow that would drown dawn itself." Arya's voice drifted down from the rampart above. "Then we kill him before he reaches it." "Steel cannot cut him," Bran replied, "nor fire burn him. He was forged in lamentations older than men's first fire. Yet the monolith itself remains bound by deep law. He cannot wield its full power if any strand of living memory interlaces with its singing ice. That is why Drogon and I must go, memory born upon flame, to wrap the monolith in living thought." Daenerys' jaw trembled. She folded arms around herself as though chilled. "And my place in this? Am I to watch my child depart with a Stark while I tend hearth fires?" Bran's chest tightened at the rawness in her tone. Empathy, new sharpened by weirwood's sap, washed through him. "You are mother of dragons, breaker of chains. The realm still needs you at Winterfell. If I fall, Drogon dies. Should Drogon fall, memory burns. You must hold the hearth of the living flame, that at our return light yet lives to spread." Jonon stepped forward, voice edged with resolve. He should not go alone. "I will ride." "Benson me." Drogon snorted, a plume of smoke wreathing Bran. Bran shook his head. A second rider might strain what balance we have forged. The weirwood fire within him resonates with only one. But you will follow, Jon, with the northern hosts. Ghost and your free folk scouts know those lands. A day behind us, no more. Grey Worm finally spoke, words weighty as spear thrusts. Unsullied will guard the castle. We will fight for the queen. Tyrion tucked parchment into furs. And I will write letters to every holding still standing. Send north what you can spare. Grain, salted meat, men. Winterfell must remain the beating heart. Nay. Decisions fluttered outward like startled sparrows. Sansa commanding ravens, Arya volunteering as outrider, Gendry already descending to forges to craft special chains rumored to bind frost spirits. Bran heard them, but only dimly. Drogon's attention had turned skyward, pupils tracking a swirl in clouds. Dark flecks tumbled upon high wind. Snow or ash? Bran felt a pressure there, as though distant thunderheads massed with ill intent. 10 days. Perhaps 8 now. He turned to Daenerys. She stood silent, chin lifted in composure born of years clothed in broken chains and seething rebellions. Yet moisture clung to lashes, freezing before it could fall. Bran extended a hand. He will return, Bran vowed, else I shall not. That is the knot we have tied. A flicker of green gold danced beneath Drogon's scales as though affirming the pledge. Daenerys regarded dragon and boy for a long moment. Then, moving with grace reminiscent of her first uncertain steps across Marie's mosaics, she closed the distance and laid her palm atop Bran's. It was warm, though not dragon warm, and trembled faintly. Fly, she said, a single syllable tempered in sorrow and hope. And hurry home. Bran swallowed. He squeezed her fingers once, then released. Rolling back, he prepared to climb anew. This time, Drogon crouched lower still, forming an easy lift. Bran ascended, sliding into cradle of thick sinew between ridges. Cold wind whipped cloak and hair, yet beneath him beat a living forge. Jon placed a hand to Drogon's foreleg. It struck Bran how small his brother appeared, how enormous the promise beneath him. Jon gazed up. The north will ride when the moon turns, he said. Leave some for us to kill. Bran managed the ghost of a smile. The enemy is memoryless. There will be plenty. A hush fell about the clearing. Snow danced in uncertain spirals. Bran sucked icy breath, exhaled slow, and pressed his palm flat. Through scale he pulsed a single command. Rise. Dragonsong answered. First a tremor in the breastbone, then colossal wings unfurling with sonorous crack. They sliced dawn air, driving vortexes that toppled what snow yet clung to branches. Gasps erupted as bystanders threw up arms against swirling powder and debris. Drogon pumped once, twice. Earth launched away, stones clattering. Then they were airborne. Wind roared, flattening Bran's cloak and stealing breath. Winterfell fell beneath them. A sprawl of granite and pale roofs dappled in lamplight, banners snapping, spears glinting like tiny needles. Bran felt dizzy tears prick eyes, not of fear but exhilaration so pure it seemed carved from childlike wonder. Legs that had not run since he fell from a tower now rode wind with a beast of myth. He closed eyelids against the sting, letting second sight guide. Snow clouds parted. Sky burned pale rose. Drogon angled north, tail streaming. Bran's mind stretched outward. He touched weirwood slumbering along the King's Road, glimpsed wagon loads of firewood rumbling south, felt children still abed dreaming of summer. He reached further, beyond Last Hearth, where forests stood bare, sap frozen in root. In those barren groves, the song changed. A dirge of cracking ice, antlers snapped, cold hands clawing earth. He tasted faint threads of the monolith's call, low notes thrumming like a bell struck beneath glacier, drawing whites as lodestone draws shards. Drogon felt it too. His wings beat harder, the membrane humming. Hours passed in pounding rhythm. The land below altered subtly. Rolling foothills gave to scraggly plains, and then to the ragged expanse where the winter river wound beneath glass-hard skin. Herds of elk once grazed here, Now only their bones decorated drifts. Bran coaxed Drogon lower, searching for updrafts to spare fatigue. They soared through ravines etched by ancient waters, slipped between pinnacle rocks glazed in hoarfrost. At times Bran reached down, skimming gloved fingertips across the topmost branches of frost-hardened pines. Sparks of dreamsight flickered as each tree whispered its decades. In mid-afternoon, clouds bruised dark along western horizon. A smell rode the wind, stale, metallic, tinged with something foul, the scent of the dead in motion. Bran pointed Drogon toward a towering crag, whose summit pierced sky like shattered fang. There they settled upon narrow shelf, obsidian claws, anchoring in basalt. Bran slid to snow-dusted rock, legs sagging under abrupt return to weakness. Drogon curled round him, shielding from gale. Below sprawled a valley peppered with broken cairns, remnants of free folk barrows, long lost to memory. Now, new figures lumbered among them, wights in tattered skins, limbs half gnawed by carrion crows. They scuttled with eerie purpose, dragging sledges laden with black-crusted ice blocks. At their center strode a shape robed in streaming tatters of midnight blue, taller than any man, face hidden behind visor of rime. Eyes glimmered starless gray. In his clutch he bore a spear forged from melded vertebrae, its tip sheathed by cold smoke. Bran felt a void where that figure's memories should be, an absence hungrier than any presence. The figure halted, head tilting upward toward the crag. Despite distance, Bran sensed gaze lock upon them. The air between mount and valley chilled further. Wind died unnatural. White's movement slowed, but did not cease. They continued hauling ice blocks toward a wagon formed of lashed mammoth bones. Bran glimpsed within that skeletal cradle an angular shard, crystalline, tall as two men, edges writhing in pale internal light. A fragment of the monolith itself, broken long ago yet still singing. Each note drummed in Bran's chest, echoing through Drogon's scales. The enemy sought to piece the shard together. A hiss escaped Bran's lips unbidden. Drogon mirrored with a low growl. Heat lines rippled along his throat scales. Bran steadied with hand to ridge. Too soon to strike, their flame could melt ice, but not sever the emptiness inside that spear-bearer. They must find the unbroken core before fragments united. He closed eyes, letting the valley fade. Reaching deeper still, Bran traveled routeways beneath permafrost, slipping through veins of stone into memories of the land. He saw the monolith as it once stood, planted at heart of a grand gathering place for those who would be called the Thens. It towered over bonfires, obsidian flint embedded at its base. Children carved runes along its surface in worship of something they did not comprehend. One dawn, greenseers came, felt the monolith poison thought, and shattered it with songs of summer melted into steel. The largest shard they buried beneath a frozen lake far to the north, tangling it in nets of living cedar woven by children of the forest. That burial site, Bran realized, lay another 100 leagues beyond this valley, near the wind-carved teeth. The spear-bearer sought every fragment. If he reached the lake, the shard would be whole. Bran's purpose sharpened to blade edge. Reach the lake first, merge with the shard's song, bind its notes to living memory that no darkness could consume. He opened eyes. Horizon already dimmed, midday sun devoured by roiling banks of cloud. The valley below crawled with more dead rising each instant. Cracks fissured snow as skeletal hands punched through, summoned by gray-eyed sentinel. Drogon's wings flexed. Bran felt his own heart drum. They must fly again. But he sensed strain in Drogon's chest. Flight muscle quivered, not of weariness, but of something like infection. The glow beneath scales pulsed erratically. Bran realized the shard's siren note was interfering. Its dissonant chord rippled through memory flame link, sowing discord. He laid both palms upon black hide, poured calm along the bond, weaving threads of old god's song into Dragon's furnace. Heat steadied. Bran mounted. North, he breathed, voice near stolen by wind. Drogon answered with thunderclap wings. Snow exploded from the shelf. They leapt skyward. The sentinel below raised spear, streaming frost from tip. But they were gone into cloud before the first shards of ice hissed upward. Night plummeted swiftly in these latitudes. Darkness swallowed them, yet Bran saw via faint green luminescence flickering within Drogon's scales, a living lantern cutting through gloom. They flew for hours. Storms harassed, sleet stinging cheeks until blood mixed with meltwater on Bran's skin. High winds hurled them sideways. Bran clung, sending calming pulses. Each mile north thinned air. Horizon blurred with drifting sheets of ice fog. At times, vast shadows moved beneath, silent migrations of huddling whites or hibernating giants caught in eternal frost. Bran glimpsed ghost fir forests where dead leaves shimmered silver under aurora. He felt their roots hiss warnings of a chill deeper than sunless seas. Finally, on the fourth watch of night, the wind-carved teeth appeared. Jagged spires of granite, buffeted by ceaseless gales, sculpted into grotesque arches and knife-edged shelves. At their heart lay a shattered crater, the bed of an ancient lake long evaporated, except where cracks clutched pockets of turquoise water sealed beneath panes of ice. Somewhere within, the main shard slept. Drogon descended through whirling snow plumes into the crater's hollow. Bran spied clusters of cedar, their limbs bent but unbroken, encircling what had once been the lake's deepest point. Even before Drogon's talons touched ground, Bran felt intangible cords tug, pulling memory from marrow toward unseen center. He slid to earth, wheels crunching thin crusts of ice. Drogon folded wings but remained coiled, vigilant eyes scanning shifting darkness. Bran pushed forward. Snow here sparkled strangely, internal motes of red swimming like embers trapped in crystal. Cedars bowed inward, forming an aisle. Each trunk bore glyphs carved by children's stone-tipped knives, sigils of weirwood leaf and moon tear, binding runes to lull the shard's hunger. Yet centuries of wind had worn grooves. The song leaked, faint but urgent. Bran felt it as dull ache behind eyes. Drogon rumbled, smoke curling along nostrils. At aisle's end, beneath a partial canopy of interwoven branches, lay a mound of ice limned in pale rose. Cracks radiated outward like spiderweb. Bran halted. Inside the mound glimmered a colossal crystal tooth, its apex fractured but whole enough to tower above his height. At its core lights churned, bleak grays, winter blues, and flickers of green reminiscent of weirwood sap. Memory and absence warred there. The shard called to Drogon's fire, seeking to snuff it or bend it. Bran wheeled closer until fingertips hovered inches from chilled surface. Images assaulted him. Armies of drowned snow, screams muffled by blizzards, endless night scouring kingdoms south to Dorne. Yet under that cacophony, he caught glimpses of older songs. Children dancing round bonfire sparks, giants carving runes of strength in mammoth femurs, a weirwood sprig sprouting crimson leaves above first thaw. Echoes of life inside the shard, waiting to be reclaimed. He pressed his palm to it. Frost stabbed flesh, but he did not flinch. Memory poured through him into crystal. Trees answered, wolves howled, dragons roared. Drogon stepped forward, chest flaring incandescent. Bran beckoned mentally. Dragon laid snout against opposite side of shard. Ice hissed where hot breath struck. Lines of molten red raced across interior, seeking Bran's palm, coiling about it like ribbons. Bran uttered wordless plea. Meld, not destroy. Unite, not consume. The shard pulsed. A shockwave of color burst outward. Green, red, and midnight blue. Cedars bent as though in hurricane. Bran's mind exploded with vision. He stood at Winterfell's courtyard as leaves sprouted in a single night. He rode daylight skies above Dorne on leathern wings. He waddled as white bear across drifting flows. He lay beneath the ocean floor dreaming of watery suns. All living memories flowed into Shard's matrix, knitting cracks with luminous threads. When the surge abated, Bran found himself half kneeling, frost-coating cloak. His hand remained on now warm surface. Within the shard, motes of green and ember roiled in luminous dance. Memory and flame fused. Drogon let out a resonant roar that echoed between teeth mounts, shaking snow from heights. A distant tremor vibrated ground. Hoofbeats. No. Footfalls of an army marching through brittle earth. The spear-bearer approached, drawn by the shard's awakened blaze. Bran straightened. The memory flame lodged now in crystal sang out, beckoning allies yet defying empty ones. It would not bend to void. But could he move it? Shard rooted deep, fused to permafrost. He needed time. He turned to Drogon, projecting urgency. The dragon unfurled wings, and with a screech of grinding ice, clasped talons around crystal base. Heat waves rolled, chiseling melt channels along shaft. Under combined force of flame and weirwood song, the shard loosened, rising like a tooth pulled from ancient jaw. A final crack, and it tore free, snow geysering outward. Drogon hugged the monolith to breast with one forelimb, each scale glowing white-hot where contact sizzled. Bran climbed swiftly to Saddle Hollow, strapping himself with leather lengths fused from Drogon's earlier scale steps. Wind howled anew, harbinger of their pursuers. Atop the crater rim, spectral silhouettes lined jagged skyline. Scores of wights, ice clinging to smashed armor. Their leader emerged, gray-eyed helm reflecting Shard's glow. Raising bone spear, he hurled it. Lightning of frozen air shrieked. Bran felt tips sear toward them, emptiness trailing. Drogon leapt skyward, the spear grazed hind talon. Exploding in snow burst that crystallized mid-air. Pain rippled up Dragon's limb. Bran screamed wordless light, sending waves of green flame back through bond. The wound smoked, but did not spread. Higher they soared. Shard clutched close. White scrambled down crater, but too late. Flames rained, melting arrowheads of ice. Bran dared one glance. The helm figure watched, head cocked, eyes tracking. In his hand another spear sprouted, birth from frost like deadly seed. Night gulped them. Stars wheeled overhead. The shard between Drogon's claws pulsed brighter, casting them in rotating patterns of emerald and crimson. Bran communed with it, coaxing memory threads to weave lattice around Dragonheart, around his own, forging trying bulwark against void. Behind them the wind carried screeches of frustration. Ahead lay southern lights, glimmer of Winterfell's fires, flickering hope. Bran steeled mind. They had the heart of the monolith, but fragments still lay in enemy hands. The war of memory and oblivion had only begun. Yet on this night, when Winterfell fell silent and Dragon chose the broken boy, the first tide turned. Drogon's roar split heavens, defiant and exultant. Beneath him, Bran clutched warm scale with fingers no longer numb, and within his chest, the mingled seed of weirwood and dragonfire blossomed, promising a new dawn, unmarred by endless winter. E.I.M.D. PGSQL. Clouds bruised with violet swirled across the sky as Drogon carved the upper air, wings laboring against high-altitude gales that rattled Bran's bones through scale and saddle. Each stroke felt heavier than the last, for the shard clutched Drogon's chest, pulsed with mingled heat and memory, shedding contrails of rose-green sparks that fluttered behind them like fireflies dragged too near a forge. Bran feared the beacon they left in their wake, but even stronger was the dread of letting the shard slip from their grasp. Somewhere in the gloom below, the spear-bearer marshaled the dead into a relentless tide, and if those vacant eyes found the trail of embers, pursuit would be swift and merciless. Bran pressed both palms to Drogon's neck, lending calm through the bond, weaving threads of the old god's song between sinew strands until the dragon's wing beats steadied. Yet drooping membrane edges and slight tremors told their cost. Drogon had flown without rest since Winterfell's dawn, fought crosswinds and sleet, and now bore a relic heavier than iron yet fragile as spun glass. Bran reached into Shard's glow, coaxing memory heat outward into Drogon's aching shoulders. The crystal responded, bleeding warmth that suffused scale and bone. Dragonfire and tree sap commingled, mending micro-tears in flight muscles, easing cramps along joint ridges. Night's chill bit all the same. Ice-crusted layers of Bran's cloak, frost-cocooned strands of hair until every breath steamed white plumes. He pulled hood further and hunched. Far behind, Low thunder rolled across plains, distant avalanche, or the tramp of white legions. Bran could not tell. He risked a backward glance. The horizon glimmered faint blue under a waxing moon. But in that pallid glow he thought he glimpsed a sinuous bruise of moving dark along the valley floors. Too large to be mere forest shadow, too disciplined to be storm. The enemy marched. A sudden downdraft slammed them. Bran's stomach lurched as Drogon dropped dozens of feet, talons grazing the tops of fractured standing stones thrusting from tundra. The shard jarred. Bran felt a flash of vertigo as centuries-old memories spilled like overturned lantern oil. Snatches of children singing in lost tongues. Wolves baying during the long night. Faces of lovers parted by death long forgotten. He clenched fists, forcing memories back into crystal lest they scatter like birds. Moonlight caught on a snaking river of ice ahead, slick as mirror glass. Bran called through bond, steering Drogon into descent toward the water's edge, where a crescent van of spruce offered brief shelter. Dragon feet crunched onto frozen gravel. Gusts of displaced air sent shards of hoarfrost skittering across the river face. Bran slid down and staggered beneath the height of cedars. His legs, earlier gifted flickers of false vigor, trembled under his weight and threatened collapse. He steadied on a trunk, its bark riddled with resinous knots that bled sticky amber. Drogon set the crystal gently into an indentation of snow. Steam hissed where it touched earth. He lowered snout to examine a rip across his hind talon, where the spear's graze had scorched scale. The wound had closed, but left hairline fissures glowing sullen ember red. Bran reached with numbed fingers, channeling shard's warmth into wound. It sealed further, leaving only faint crack lines glimmering opalescent. Drogon exhaled a plume of gratitude, his breath stirring dead needles into miniature cyclones. For long moments they rested while moon arced higher, painting skeletal trees silver. Bran listened to insomnia's hush, the creak of ice floes shifting, distant bark of a lone fox, the steady rush of rivers of air far aloft. Beneath all, he sensed a resonance like a monstrous drum. The march of the dead closing distance one tireless stride at a time. They would overtake them by dawn if Bran lingered. He needed help. Winterfell still lay many leagues south, and Drogon must conserve strength for arrival and for whatever battle followed. Bran turned inner sight down routeways, searching for friendly minds. Threads of weirwood sang back. Shapes of wolves hunting across lonely hills. Whispers of giants slumbering in caverns east of the Milkwater. And faint but strong campfires of free folk warbands moving under Jon Snow's banners. Bran caught a flicker of Ghost's keen mind racing across snow, snout to the wind, guiding scouts along a ridgeline. The host was closer than he thought. Jon must have pressed through the night after all. Bran shaped a pulse of memory into the shard, then launched it like a silent flare through Wolfdream. Ghost stiffened, ears twitching. A clarion of image flooded his senses. Drogon sheltering under cedars, a glowing crystal like frozen dawn, the enemy's long shadow creeping northeast. Ghost wheeled and bolted, mind roaring a single message toward Jon. Bran exhaled relief. Help would not come instantly, but the north was awakening. Lines of defense would converge. He turned to Drogon. The dragon had folded wings tightly, instinctively conserving heat. Bran laid his forehead against obsidian brow. "One more flight," he whispered, words half fog. To meet them halfway. Drogon's pupils, twin pits of night, softened. He nudged Bran gently, as if to ask whether the frail body shook from cold or fear. Bran smiled wanly. Cold is the lesser foe. He mounted once more, lashing furs around waist, binding himself to saddle with leather cord. Drogon clasped shard again, claws tightening around gleaming facets. With a grunt that rumbled cedar branches, he sprang skyward. Snow swirled in boiling vortices. Treetops thrashed like flags. They climbed until the river coiled like serpent silver beneath them. Then Drogon banked southwest. Bran could almost feel Winterfell's beckon, a lighthouse of beating hearts and glowing hearths. Yet, before they reached friendly lines, other shapes lurked. Civilization north of Winterfell was sparse, but not absent. A handful of crofter villages, the holdfast ruins at Deepwood Ruin, the watchtower of Nori Tor. Bran scanned for sign of life. Any outpost could provide fire and arrows, but also risk falling to undead tide. Somewhere beyond the next ridge rose smoke. Drogon spiraled downward. Bran tensed. Below a hamlet, the stony moat, huddled within a ring of low palisades. Tiny pinpricks of torchlight bobbed along inner paths. Yet along outer fields, lumbered figures that reflected no fire glow in their eyes. Bran recognized the lurching gate, whites already there. A half-dozen battered farmhouses lay aflame. Screams carried thin on the wind. He tasted Drogon's anger thrumming like taut bowstring. Fire could cleanse, but the shard made unleashing full breath risky. Flames licking crystal might fracture memory lattice or draw spearbearer sooner. They must strike, but carefully. Bran whispered strategy. A single pass, surgical. Drogon tilted, wings folding to knife-edge descent. Wind whined. Snow parted as they streaked. Bran slid hand along scale, focusing into narrow channel. A filament linking shard to Dragon's throat. Green-red flicker raced forward. Drogon opened jaws and exhaled a cone of iridescent fire that swerved mid-air. A serpent whip snaking between cottages, incinerating whites while skirting walls where villagers huddled. That strange flame, neither holy dragonfire nor weirwood sorcery, burned colder at edges, igniting only dead flesh, leaving timber charred but intact. They pulled up, soaring just above roofs. Below, survivors blinked in stunned silence while smoldering corpses collapsed. Bran glimpsed a young crofter raising hand in salute, mouth forming some half-remembered prayer to the old gods. They had little time for gratitude. Bran flicked images of new threat into minds of two ravens roosting on palisade. They took flight towards south, messages beating in wings. Drogon climbed once more, but not before Bran sensed a chill eddy swirl behind them, like air sucked from lungs of world. Over shoulder he saw it, a spear of ice arcing upward, hurled from tree line beyond village. It sang like tuning fork, edges radiating frost. Drogon rolled, but tip grazed membrane of right wing. A panel of tough hide froze, crackled spider veins of white. Drogon roared in pain, altitude dipped. Bran felt shock ripple through bond. He reached into shard, drawing forth more warmth. Channeling to wound. Crust melted, leaving raw lattice lines. But damage slowed flight. The spearbearer had closed distance faster than expected, flinging javelins of null memory that drained heat. Stiffening flesh. Bran rallied resolve. Reach Jones host swiftly. He guided Drogon along hills where night covered them. Yet constant scanning revealed white outriders pacing their course. Spectral wolves with bone showing through carry lines. Silent ravens, blacker than shadow. Trailing high. The enemy no longer hid. They harried, seeking a chink. Toward dawn, faint blush of pre-sun painted cloud bottoms. In that dim glow, Bran sensed minds ahead. Human minds, weary but alive. Trundling in long column. Jones' vanguard. Pikes glinted. Banners depicting direwolf half-furled in wind. Ghost bounded across line. Tail, a white flame. Relief flooded Bran. He sent call. Open ranks, prepare pyres. Drogon descended, in sweeping circle, over a frozen meadow. Soldiers scattered at first, then steadied as Jones' voice boomed. Hold! He's with us! Hooves of Glover cavalry pawed ground. Archers raised flaming arrows but held. Drogon flared wings, landed amid swirl of snow. Bran slid to ground, legs buckling. Davos Seaworth rushed to support him, eyeing shard with awe. Jon shoved through ranks, armor frosted, hair stiff with rime. 7 hells, Bran. We thought you halfway to White Harbor by now. He clasped Bran's shoulder, concern etched deep. Bran mustered half-smile. Took a detour. Jon's gaze shifted to shard. He extended gauntleted hand close but stopped short. Heat radiated, gentle yet relentless. What is it? The heart of winter's psalm, Bran murmured. Now bound to living memory. If we carry it to Winterfell's heart tree before the void reclaims it, we can root its power in life. But the spearbearer follows. As if summoned, A chill breeze swept camp, torches guttered. Davos signaled to hornmen. A call blasted across ridge. Assemble shield wall. Bran turned to Ghost, who crouched near Drogon, hackles high. He comes by scent of the shard, Bran said. Best we not linger. Yet soldiers and horses needed rest. Supply wagons labored in snow. Drogon's wing still tender. A plan formed. Split forces. Jon would lead main host along King's Road spur, intercept Whites, buy time. Bran and a cadre of fast riders, led by Arya and Gendry on fresh geldings, would escort Shard and Drogon on quicker west slant route through Wolfswood to Winterfell. The Shard's lure might draw a spear-bearer, but Bran hoped dividing scent would confuse ranks. Arguments sparked. Tormund insisted on guarding Bran. Sansa's outrider demanded Shard remain under heavy infantry, but time compressed. Bran's words, bolstered by Forest Whisper, carried weight. Delay court's doom. Jon gripped forearm. Go. Tot. We'll hold them. Dunham. Drogon loosed a gravel rumble. Bran reclined. Arya vaulted onto a dapple mare. Gendry close behind, a sledge cart rigged to 2 elk trained by free folk to pull in silence. The shard was loaded carefully, lashed with soaked hides to diffuse glow. Drogon lifted into air, wings clipping treetops, flying low to mask silhouette. The escort wove through tangled pathways, dawn-bleaching sky ghost white. Snow fell again, lazy spiral flakes muffling hoofbeats. Wolves trotted alongside, summoned by Bran's silent plea. Siblings of Nymeria's great pack, lean and scarred, their eyes like amber lanterns. They made steady progress until midday, when a muffled horn bray reached from rear. Gendry reined horse, scanning tree gloom. Bran looked back. Among trunks stretched a haze of ultrafine snow glittering as though infused with starlight. Through it, glided figures cloaked in rags of twilight, limbs elongated by ice plating. Not countless Whites, only 12, arrayed in crescent. At their center strode the spear-bearer. Arya cursed softly, flipping hood. I'll take the flank. She nudged Mount into gallop, disappearing through underbrush like shadow on swift legs. Gendry angled cart horses into trot. Bran signaled Drogon. Guard rear, burn sparingly. The dragon wheeled, hovered low enough to rake frost with tail, jaws parting to reveal simmering magma. The 12 advanced without hurry, weapons of blue ice singing soft dissonance. One raised barbed hand. Crystalline shards erupted from ground, arrowing upward. Drogon veered. 3 shards scraped chest, exploding into fractal shards that tried to burrow inward. But shard fire flared, melting them. A wyvern-like shriek echoed. Arya emerged behind enemy line, leaping from saddle onto branch, launching Valyrian steel dagger at rearmost White. Blade struck spine, severing head. Creature collapsed into powder. The spear-bearer ignored. He lifted his weapon and hurled. Bran tracked its path, too swift. He reached into shard, thrust memory fire outward. The spear collided with swirling aura and shuddered, trajectory tipping. It clipped Drogon's left wing joint, embedding a thumb-length barb of pure absence. Drogon screamed. The wing spasmed, sending Dragon spiraling into pine canopy. Branches cracked under mass. Bran felt agony cascade through bond. He slid partly from saddle, but clung. Drogon crashed onto slope, tail plowing trench, snow geysering dot. Shard cart skidded sideways, elk bawled. Gendry leapt clear, hauling reins. Snow dust settled about clearing. Spear-bearer advanced, 11 phantoms fanning outward. Bran's mind raced. He called wolves. 5 large beasts loped from trees, snarling. They struck flanking Whites in concert, claws tearing frozen ligaments. Valyrian dagger flashed as Arya darted, slicing at knee joints. She rolled under scything blade and drove point up through chin. 2 more crumbled. Yet, spear-bearer drew fresh javelin from frost swirl. Bran sensed its emptiness like a puncture in the world. He had to sever this foe's link to cold song. The shard might do it, if he risked contact. Bran eased from saddle, landing awkwardly in snow. His legs near useless, he dragged himself toward Crystal, lashed to cart. Fingers trembling, he tugged hides free. Shard's glow seeped out, bathing clearing in auroral haze. The spear-bearer's helm turned sharply. He strode with deliberate hunger. Bran braced on knees, pressing both hands to Crystal. He felt depthless ocean of memory within, swirling subduction zones, where past slid beneath present. He spoke inside mind. Open. The shard brightened until snowflakes vaporized mid-air. The remaining whites faltered, limbs convulsing under sudden onslaught of recollection, faint echoes of life they had lost. They howled, clawing at faces as memory seared them. Arya cut down another while wolves hamstrung two more. Spearbearer shuddered but regained composure. He leveled javelin, not at Drogon, but at Shard. Destroy it. Break Bran's hold. Bran saw intent, poured more memory into Crystal. Scenes of warmth, children's laughter, Summer and Shaggy Dog wrestling by broken tower. The surface erupted in whirls of living green flame. Javelin hurtled. Bran forced Crystal to sing a counternote. Mid-flight, the spear splintered into glittering motes that clanged across clearing. A sonic boom rippled. Cedars swayed. For the first time, Spearbearer hesitated. In that heartbeat, Arya sprang from snowy outcropping. Valyrian blade reversed in grip. She drove into gap where frost cuirass split at armpit, twisting upward. Gray eyes widened with surprise. No blood spilled, but coat of rime spider webbed, fractures racing. Bran thrust Shard's radiance forward, invasive memories flooding emptiness inside foe. The spearbearer convulsed. Frost armor shattered as if struck by Smith's hammer. Body imploded into swirl of snow, dissipating into motes borne away by a breeze. Remaining whites fell lifeless. Strings cut. Silence slammed into clearing, broken only by Drogon's labored breathing and Arya's panting. Gendry helped Bran up. Wolves whined, shaking pulverized ice from fur. Bran knelt by Drogon's wing, the barb still lodged. He gripped it, his glove began freezing. Gritting teeth, he called Shardfire into palm. Frost sizzled. He wrenched barb free. A hiss like dying star issued as vacuum collapsed. Drogon's musculature knit slowly, membrane repairing. Arya wiped blade on cloak. Is it done? Bran listened. Distant wind carried no marching rumble. The spearbearer was linchpin of that vanguard. Without him, the larger host might falter, but legions still crawled south. We wounded the head, Bran said, yet the body remains. Gendry rehitched elk, hands shaking. Then let's not meet the body. They resumed journey. Drogon, lighter without Barb's corruption, managed controlled flight above tree line, while escort wound along game path. Bran stayed ground-bound now, saving Dragon's strength for final defense. Wolves scouted. Arya vanished ahead, silent sentinel. Toward dusk, tree density thinned. Ridges behind them glowed faint red as sun set. They crested a rise, and there lay Winterfell, snow-capped walls luminous under hundreds of torches. Banners of direwolf and dragon fluttered. Horns sounded. Gates creaked open. Inside courtyards bustled. Unsullied trenches of oil, northern smiths stoking braziers of dragon glass-tipped bolts, maesters arranging triage tents. Jon's main host not yet arrived, but preparations surged. Grey Worm directed phalanxes. Sansa oversaw ration caravans. Daenerys stood atop tower parapet, cloak whipping, eyes searching horizon, and widening in relief at sight of Drogon. Bran guided Shard cart through gate. The crystals glowed dimmed in proximity to Heart Tree as though content nearing its new route. Drogon alighted within outer yard, folding wings with gasp of spent bellows. Daenerys descended steps at near run, skirts streaming. She paused before Bran, gaze flitting between dragon and Shard. Lines of tension across her brow softened. She reached to touch Drogon's muzzle. He leaned in, fanning warm breath. Tears welled in her eyes, drying in heat. Without word she embraced Bran, arms delicate yet fierce. Bran stiffened, unused to such warmth, then relaxed. He whispered, "He is yours still, yet now more than ever himself." They parted. Jon rode through gate moments later, dusted in snow and soot, armor dented from skirmish. He dismounted, clasped arms with Bran. "We slowed them," he said, voice hoarse. Tormund counts burn pits, stacked like cordwood. But more crawl from the north, leaderless perhaps, but drawn by habit. A storm of bodies. "They will come tonight," Bran said. "We must plant the shard now." Grey Worm escorted them into Godswood. The heart tree loomed, red leaves stirring, though no wind penetrated wall of ancient oak and elm. Bran rolled Shardcart to its base. The crystal quivered, casting interlocking shadows of emerald and rust across snow. Bran directed unsullied sappers to dig shallow trench at root foot. They hesitated, but a nod from Daenerys spurred action. Spades bit earth. Steam rose where metal touched frozen soil. Under Bran's guidance, they lowered shard into hollow, orienting fractured apex skyward. Bran pressed palms to trunk and crystal simultaneously. He felt circuits aligning, dragonfire threads twining with root nerves, memory rivers finding aquifer. Sap seeped along bark grooves, glowing faintly. Leaves rustled louder, as if breathed upon by some vast lung. The shard's inner blaze slowed, diffusing into trunk. In return, veins of pale wood creeped into crystal, anchoring. A sudden stillness descended. Snowflakes slowed mid-fall, suspended like motes in amber. In that arrested moment, Bran perceived everything. Unsullied hearts hammering, Sansa's breath fogging silver, Davos whispering prayer. Beyond walls, thousands of feet trudging. A dull roar. Further, astral currents swirling overhead. He felt Drogon beside Hearttree. Chest rising slow, content. The moment broke. Time resumed. Shard's glow stabilized. A steady heartbeat pulsing through roots into wall foundations, into every stone. Bran sagged, spent. Arya caught elbow. "Is it done?" "Whether done or just begun, we soon find out," Bran murmured. Horns cried from ramparts. White sighted on eastern field. Jon sprinted toward gate, ghost at heel. Daenerys mounted parapet steps, voice carrying orders to ballista crews. Grey Worm marshaled unsullied into spear rank lines, flooding curtain wall. Bran remained beneath Hearttree, drawing cloak tight, listening to new harmony vibrating through Godswood. He felt Winterfell awaken, stones humming faint chord, like lodestone touched by lightning. The shard's memories seeped outward, invigorating fortifications with sense of seasons. Children's laughter, harvest feasts, love sworn in crypt shadows, life saturating dead stone. First clash echoed, arrows whistled, impact thuds, snarls of whites scaling ladders. Bran saw through ravens swooping overhead. Vast tide of corpses smashing against moat edges, climbing on fallen. Yet as they breached outermost trench, fresh obstacles erupted. Roots burst from churned slush, entangling ankles, hurling some backward. The ground itself fought. Jon led sortie at gatehouse, Longclaw sitting. Each cut left streak of ghost fire where blade touched white. The shard's influence amplified Valyrian steel, imbuing it with ember memory that seared emptiness. Gendry's dragonglass axes blazed brighter, biting deeper. Drogon flapped atop great hall roof, unleashing jets of disciplined flame, now tinged green, precise arcs that burned dead but curved away from wood shingle. Wings still sore, but shard rooting in castle lent strength. Wave after wave broke. In command trench, Tyrion directed flame pot throwers, reading angles off hurried sketches. Davos shouted corrections. Sansa's runners hauled arrow crates. Maester Samwell, puffing, distributed obsidian-tipped bolts. Hours stretched. Bran anchored mind to Hearttree, weaving root song to shore crumbling sections. Each white that entered Godswood found ground shifting, limbs of fallen weirwood saplings animating to bind and drag into pools where Drogon's flame liquefied them. Near dawn, snowfall ceased. Eastern horizon brightened. The undead attack slackened. Remaining whites milled in confusion, some turning north as if leashed tug severed. Their spear-bearing master gone, they drifted like husks on wind. Jon ordered gates opened. Cavalry thundered forth, cutting stragglers. Cheers rose. Yet Bran felt uneasy hush, like breath held, not final victory. Far above, sky shimmered with faint aurora, unusual this far south. Colors rippled. Green, violet, streaks of crimson, reminiscent of Shard's heart. Bran sensed presence, not hostile but vast, consequence of binding memory to stone. The world had noticed. He closed eyes, journeying through root web. He drifted past Wolf's Den, talon across white knife, to Isle of Faces where Green's ears tended weirwood groves. There, minds touched his, astonished. Farther he reached past next swamps, glimpsing old gods stirring after long dormancy. The conflux at Winterfell became beacon, drawing attention of powers ancient and half-forgotten. Giants stirring from hidden valleys, children of forest tribes in far-shadowed Weir, even krakens beneath sunset sea detecting tremor. The struggle with night's residue was not over, but balance had shifted. The living world remembered itself. Bran opened eyes to find Daenerys kneeling beside him, snow dusting hair. She studied Shard's steady glow. "Will it hold?" she asked quietly. "For a time," Bran answered. "Until memory fails or is renewed by each generation." He looked up at her. "That is the truer war, against forgetting." She gazed toward ramparts where Jon hugged Ghost, soldiers slapping each other's backs. "Then we write songs tonight," she said, voice soft but resolute. "And remember them when winter ends." Footsteps crunched. Arya arrived, dark blood smudging cheek, gray cloak fluttering like crowwing. She offered Bran a half-grin. "Still no run," she teased. Bran chuckled. "A sound rare. I fly now." Arya's smile widened, then softened as she studied Crystal. "Feels like we've stolen dawn itself." "Borrowed," Bran corrected. "Dawn is meant to be shared." She nodded, turning as horns signaled final pursuit rides. Bran let body sag against root, exhaustion tidal. Yet inside, currents of memory flowed, clear, strong. He sensed Drogon take perch above Great Hall, curling smoke into morning sun. He sensed Winterfell stones singing lullaby to each newborn ember. Mothers would cradle babes tonight, trusting walls. For first time since he fell from tower window years ago, Bran believed the world might heal. Still, deep in north, pockets of darkness writhed where shards of void staggered masterless. They would need tending, frost-fanged thieves, pale spiders grown monstrous in gloom. And beyond narrow sea, other forces watched. Red priests reading flames, Qarth warlocks tasting new resonance. Balance birthed opportunity and peril alike. But that was for another dawn. For now, Bran closed eyes, head against ancient bark, listening to duet of beating dragon heart and quiet rustle of weirwood leaves. Snow melted on his lashes, running down cheeks like tears. Not sorrow but thaw. Behind eyelids, he saw children chasing ravens across fresh green Winterfell lawns, saw dragons wheeling above banners of wolf and dragon entwined. He saw the spearbearer's emptiness sealed beneath aurora-lit cairn, saw Arya teaching wildling girls steel dance, saw Jon and Daenerys side by side at council mapping, rebuilding of North. The world still held darkness, but memory held light. And now, thanks to a shard fused to an old tree, light had roots deep enough to grow again. Bran slept, and while he slept the castle breathed with him, its every stone echoing the ancient vow made beneath falling snow. That Winterfell would never fall silent again, not while dragonfire and Green's ears stream guarded its heart.